The crystal throne room on Zentara Prime stretched for half a mile in every direction. Golden pillars reached toward a ceiling that disappeared into darkness above. Emperor Vexthal sat on his massive throne carved from a single piece of starlight crystal that glowed with inner fire. His forearms gestured dramatically as he spoke to the assembled crowd of nobles and military officers. "Today marks the end of human arrogance," the Emperor declared. His voice echoed through the vast chamber and broadcast across 4,000 star systems. "For too long, these primitive creatures have ignored our authority. They expand into sacred space without permission. They refuse to pay tribute. They treat our diplomatic messages like junk mail." The crowd of alien dignitaries nodded and made sounds of approval. General Moxtar stepped forward with his medals jangling on his chest. "Your Imperial Majesty, our intelligence reports show they have maybe 100 ships total. Their technology is centuries behind ours. This will be over in days." Emperor Vexthal smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Excellent. Send the declaration through all proper channels. Make sure they understand the full weight of imperial justice." 3 days later, Admiral Jake Morrison sat in his office at United Earth Defense Command, drinking his morning coffee. The office was small and cluttered with reports, coffee mugs, and a half-eaten sandwich from yesterday. Outside his window, he could see the busy traffic of shuttles coming and going from the orbital platform. The communication terminal beeped. Morrison glanced at it while reading through patrol schedules. A formal diplomatic message had arrived from something called the Zephyrian Galactic Empire. He opened it and started reading while taking another sip of coffee. The message was 17 pages long. It started with a list of titles for Emperor Vexthal that took up the first page. Ruler of the Sacred Stars, Master of 10,000 Worlds, Keeper of Ancient Wisdom, Destroyer of the Weak, and so on. Morrison skipped ahead to the actual content. "By imperial decree, the human species is hereby declared enemies of the Zephyrian Empire. Your crimes include unauthorized expansion, failure to acknowledge imperial authority, and insulting behavior toward our diplomatic envoys. You have 72 hours to surrender unconditionally or face complete annihilation." Morrison finished his coffee and set the cup down. He made a note on his calendar to buy more coffee later. The door to his office opened and Captain Lisa Bennett walked in carrying a datapad. "Morning, Admiral," Lisa said. She was a tall woman with short brown hair and the no-nonsense attitude that made her perfect for handling logistics. "I need your approval on the training schedule for next week." "Sure thing," Morrison replied, reaching for the pad. "Oh, by the way, that Zephyrian Empire just declared war on us." Lisa paused while handing over the pad. "The who now?" "Zephyrian Empire. Apparently we've been insulting them or something." Morrison started reviewing the training schedule. "Says here they rule 4,000 star systems." "Huh." Lisa sat down in the chair across from his desk. "Should we postpone the war games scheduled for Thursday?" Morrison looked up from the pad. "Why would we do that?" "Well, if there's going to be actual war, maybe we should focus on that instead of training exercises." "The training might be useful, though. Besides, it's not like we have anything else planned for this week." Lisa nodded. "Good point. What about the supply run to Mars Colony?" Lieutenant Rodriguez was asking about the schedule. "Keep it as planned. We'll need those supplies either way." Back on Zentara Prime, Emperor Vexthal waited for the human response. His communication advisors assured him that surrender messages typically arrived within hours of receiving a declaration. The Emperor had conquered 47 different species over his 300-year reign. Most surrendered immediately upon learning of the Empire's power. "They probably need time to translate the message," suggested his chief diplomat. "Human language is very primitive," General Moxtar agreed. "Our cultural specialists say humans form emotional attachments to their homeworld. They might need time to process the reality of losing it." The Emperor nodded wisely. "We shall be patient. But prepare the advance fleet anyway. 500 ships should be more than enough to handle whatever pathetic resistance they might offer." Meanwhile, the declaration of war was making its way through human bureaucracy. It reached the State Department where Secretary of State Helen Brooks read through it during lunch. She forwarded it to the Department of Defense with a note. "FYI, another Empire thing. Please handle appropriately." At the Pentagon, General Beth Taylor glanced at the message between meetings. She sent a copy to Admiral Morrison with a message. "Jake, looks like your department. Let me know if you need anything." Morrison received the forwarded message and realized he already had a copy. He filed both versions in his inbox and went back to reviewing personnel assignments. Dr. Amy Rodriguez at the Xenobiology Research Center found the declaration fascinating from a scientific perspective. She immediately began preparing research protocols for studying Zephyrian culture and biology. This could be a breakthrough opportunity, she told her assistant. We've never had direct contact with a multi-system empire before. Her assistant, Dr. Kevin Chen, looked worried. But they're threatening to destroy us. Well, yes, but think of the research possibilities first. We can worry about the other stuff later. On Mars Colony, engineer Rick Carter was working on expanding the shipyard facilities when his supervisor mentioned the war declaration. Rick paused in his welding to consider this information. Does this mean we'll get overtime pay for weekend shifts? Rick asked. Probably, his supervisor replied. War work usually pays better. Cool. I could use the extra money. The news reached civilian populations through standard media channels. Most people treated it like any other international incident. The stock market barely reacted. Sports betting pools started taking odds on how long the conflict would last, with most bets placed on less than a week. President Helen Brooks held her regular Tuesday press conference. Reporter Janet Mills raised her hand during the question period. Madam President, we've received reports that an alien empire has declared war on humanity. Can you comment? President Brooks nodded. We're aware of the situation and are monitoring developments closely. Our defense forces are prepared to respond appropriately. Another reporter followed up. But they're threatening complete annihilation of our species. Yes, we've read their message. It was quite lengthy. In other news, the infrastructure bill passed yesterday, which should create jobs in 37 states and improve our transportation networks. But what about the war? We'll handle it. Next question. What the Zephyrian Empire did not know was that humanity had been quietly preparing for exactly this situation for 20 years. Not because they wanted war, but because they had learned something important during their first contact with alien civilizations. The galaxy operated on a simple principle of might makes right. While other species focused on ceremony and tradition, humans focused on practical solutions. They had spent 2 decades building something unprecedented in galactic history, all while maintaining the appearance of a minor spacefaring civilization. The Emperor's intelligence reports were technically accurate. Humanity did have limited visible military presence. What the reports failed to detect was everything else. Colonel Danny Hayes was having his morning briefing at Luna Base when Lieutenant Mike Johnson walked in with a datapad and a concerned expression. The briefing room was small and functional, with gray walls and a view of Earth through the reinforced windows. Danny was reviewing duty schedules for the week while drinking his 3rd cup of coffee. Sir, we just received word about that war declaration from the Zephyrian Empire, Mike said, setting the pad down on the table. Danny glanced at the information while continuing to mark names on the schedule. Oh, right. Admiral Morrison mentioned something about that yesterday. What's the timeline looking like? Intelligence estimates their advanced fleet will arrive in about 2 weeks. 500 ships according to their own broadcasts. 500, huh? Danny made a note on his calendar. Well, we should probably wrap things up here by then. Think we can finish the equipment testing by Friday? Mike looked confused. Sir, shouldn't we be preparing for battle? We are prepared. We've been prepared for years. Danny stood up and walked to the window overlooking the lunar surface. In the distance, he could see the mining operations that had been running continuously for the past decade. Tell you what, though, let's schedule that poker game for Saturday night. We might have some free time after we deal with this Empire situation. Poker, sir? Yeah, I've been meaning to take some money off Rodriguez from the research station. She thinks she's good at cards, but she has terrible tells. Dr. Amy Rodriguez at the Xenobiology Research Center was having the best day she had experienced in months. The war declaration had given her department unprecedented access to information about an advanced alien civilization. She sat surrounded by holographic displays showing Zephyrian ship designs, cultural information, and biological data. Kevin, look at this, she called to her assistant. Their emperor has 4 arms and what appears to be a chitinous exoskeleton. The evolutionary implications are fascinating. Dr. Kevin Chen looked up from his own workstation where he was analyzing communication patterns. Dr. Rodriguez, shouldn't we be worried about them trying to kill us all? Oh, that's just posturing. Amy waved dismissively. Most species make threats before actual diplomacy begins. It's like rattling before striking. The important thing is we finally have detailed information about a galactic empire. Do you realize how much we can learn? But they have thousands of ships. And we have better technology. Trust me, I've seen the classified reports. Our ships make theirs look like antiques. She pulled up another holographic display. Now look at their social structure. It's a traditional monarchy with hereditary nobility. They probably haven't had an original idea in centuries. On Mars Colony, engineer Rick Carter was working on the new shipyard expansion when his supervisor Jim Watson approached with the morning reports. The construction site bustled with activity as crews assembled massive framework structures that would eventually house ship construction bays. "Rick, got some news about that alien empire thing," Jim said, shouting over the sound of industrial machinery. Rick shut off his welding torch and lifted his helmet. "Yeah, what about it?" "They're sending ships our way. Probably gonna be some fighting." Rick nodded and checked his work schedule on his wrist display. "Does that mean overtime pay for weekend shifts?" "I was hoping to finish the new addition to my HAB unit." "Probably. War work usually means double time." "Sweet, I could use the money. How many ships are they sending?" "Few hundred, apparently." "Huh." Rick lowered his helmet and restarted his torch. "Well, better get these new bays finished then. We'll probably need them." The Zephyrian advance fleet was already underway, led by Fleet Commander Korthak in his flagship Stellar Dominance. The commander was a veteran of 30 successful conquests and had never encountered serious resistance from any species. He stood on his bridge reviewing tactical displays that showed his fleet's progress toward human space. "Commander, our scouts report unusual energy signatures in the outer human systems," reported his sensor officer. "What kind of signatures?" Korthak asked without looking up from his tactical plans. "Unknown, sir. Very powerful. But we cannot identify the source. Probably their primitive power generation systems. Humans are known for crude but effective technology." His tactical officer nodded in agreement. "Our intelligence reports indicate they have less than 100 ships total. Most likely converted cargo vessels with basic weapons." "Excellent. This will be over quickly then." Back on Earth, President Helen Brooks was meeting with her cabinet to discuss the quarterly budget when Secretary of Defense Robert Taylor brought up the alien situation. "Helen, we need to talk about this Zephyrian thing," Robert said during a break between budget discussions. "Oh right, the war declaration. How are we handling that?" "The usual way. Admiral Morrison has it under control." "Good. Do we need to make any public statements?" "Probably not yet. No point in making people nervous over nothing." "Agreed. Let's stick to the infrastructure." Announcement for this week's news cycle. What the Zephyrian Empire could not have known was that humanity had spent 20 years building the most advanced military force in galactic history. While other species focused on impressive displays and ceremonial combat, humans had quietly revolutionized warfare itself. Dr. Sarah Mitchell at the Advanced Weapons Research Facility was putting finishing touches on the latest plasma cannon systems. The weapons could punch through any known shielding technology in the galaxy. More importantly, they were mounted on ships that moved faster and hit harder than anything the Zephyrians had ever encountered. "The way, Mark 7 systems are ready for deployment," she reported to Admiral Morrison during their weekly check-in call. "How many units do we have operational?" Morrison asked from his office. "About 12,000 ship-mounted systems plus the planetary defense installations." "That should be plenty. Any issues with the new targeting computers?" "All green. The AI systems can track and engage up to 50 targets simultaneously per weapon." "Perfect. Keep up the good work, Sarah." Meanwhile, Captain Sam Miller was conducting routine patrols in the outer system aboard his ship Defiance. The vessel looked like a standard cruiser from the outside, but contained technology that would revolutionize galactic combat. Miller and his crew of 40 were among the best-trained military personnel in human space. "Captain, we're picking up long-range sensors," reported his navigation officer, Lieutenant Carol Davis. "Zephyrian scouts?" "Looks like it, sir. Still 2 weeks out, but definitely headed our way." "Acknowledged. Continue standard patrol pattern." Miller made a note in his log. "Carol, remind me to update the ship's coffee supplies before they arrive. We might be busy for a few days." "Yes, sir." The galaxy was about to learn something important about humanity. When humans barely reacted to threats of total annihilation, it usually meant they had already solved the problem. The Zephyrian Empire was about to encounter something unprecedented in their long history of conquest. A species that treated galactic war as a routine maintenance issue. Emperor Vexthul continued to wait for humanity's surrender message, completely unaware that humans were already 3 moves ahead in a game he did not even know he was playing. Fleet Commander Korthak stood on the bridge of his flagship Stellar Dominance as his fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of human territory. He expected to see a few scattered mining platforms and maybe some primitive defense stations. Instead, his tactical displays lit up with sensor contacts that made no sense at all. "Sensor officer, run a full diagnostic on the detection systems," Korthak ordered while staring at the impossible readings. "Sir, I've run 3 diagnostics. The systems are functioning perfectly," came the nervous reply. "Then explain to me why I'm seeing 12,000 active ship signatures in a single star system." The bridge crew exchanged worried glances. Intelligence reports had clearly stated that humans possessed fewer than 100 vessels total. The commander walked to the main display screen and studied the tactical readout more carefully. What he saw defied everything he knew about galactic warfare. The entire star system had been converted into a fortress. Asteroid mining platforms worked continuously to strip raw materials, while automated factories churned out new vessels. Every planet, moon, and large asteroid showed defensive installations. Ship construction yards orbited each world like metallic rings. "Communications, hail the nearest human vessel," Korthak commanded. "Sir, which one? There are hundreds in our immediate vicinity." Korthak felt a chill run through his exoskeleton. Anyone will do. Captain Sam Miller was enjoying a quiet morning aboard the Defiance when the communication request came through. He had been reading reports about the new coffee blend from Earth, while his crew conducted routine system checks. The bridge was relaxed and efficient with everyone going about their normal duties. "Captain, we're being hailed by the lead Zephyrian vessel," reported Lieutenant Carol Davis from the communications station. "Put them through." "Carol." The main screen flickered to life, showing Fleet Commander Korthak in his elaborate military uniform. Covered with medals and insignia, the alien commander looked confused and slightly nervous. Despite his attempts to appear intimidating, "I am Fleet Commander Korthak of the mighty Zephyrian Empire," the alien announced with practiced authority. "We have come to accept your surrender." Sam took another sip of his coffee before responding. "Surrender for what?" "Your emperor declared war on our empire. We are here to enforce imperial justice." "Emperor? We don't have an emperor." "Also, you declared war on us, not the other way around." Korthak's 4 arms gestured in confusion. "But your species must have a supreme ruler. How else would you organize resistance? We vote on things mostly. It works pretty well." The concept of elected leadership was completely foreign to Korthak. In his experience, every species had emperors or kings who could surrender on behalf of their entire civilization. The idea that humans made collective decisions seemed impossible to comprehend. "Then I demand to speak with your highest military commander," Korthak declared. "That would probably be Admiral Morrison, but he's in meetings all day. I can patch you through to our local sector coordinator if you want." Before Korthak could respond, Sam had transferred the call to Lieutenant Commander Kate Williams, who was currently handling paperwork for mining permits at the local administrative station. Kate was a practical woman who treated every problem as just another item on her daily task list. "This is Williams. What can I do for you?" Kate said while continuing to review permit applications on her secondary screen. "I am Fleet Commander Korthak of the Zephyrian Empire. I command 500 warships and demand your immediate surrender." Kate looked up from her paperwork for the first time. 500 ships? That's a pretty decent-sized fleet. "Are you here to surrender to us?" "Surrender to you? We are the conquerors. We have never lost a battle in 300 years. Well, there's a first time for everything. Look, Commander, I'm really busy with these mining permits today. If you want to surrender, I can transfer you to the appropriate department. They handle all the diplomatic stuff." Korthak was becoming increasingly frustrated. "You cannot defeat us. We outnumber your pathetic fleet 50 to 1. Actually, you're outnumbered about 24 to 1, but who's counting?" Kate pulled up the tactical display showing all active human vessels in the system. "See, we have about 12,000 ships just in this sector alone. That's impossible. Our intelligence reports show you have less than 100 vessels total." "Oh, those are just the ships we let people see. We're not big on showing off. Kate minimized the tactical display and returned to her permit paperwork. Look, you seem like a reasonable guy, but you're really interrupting my workday here. Back on the Stellar Dominance, Korthak was trying to process what he was seeing and hearing. His tactical officer approached with updated sensor readings that made the situation even more confusing. Sir, we're detecting weapons signatures unlike anything in our database. Their defensive installations alone could probably destroy our entire fleet. What about their ship technology? Unknown, sir. But energy readings suggest weapons more powerful than our heaviest battle cruisers. Korthak realized he was facing something unprecedented in Zephyrian military history. The humans were not acting like any conquered species he had ever encountered. They showed no fear, made no desperate pleas for mercy, and seemed genuinely confused about why anyone would want to surrender to them. Communications. Send a priority message to Emperor Vex Thule. Inform him that the situation is not as reported. Dr. Amy Rodriguez was having the time of her life at the Xenobiology Research Center. The direct contact with Zephyrian forces was providing unprecedented research opportunities. She had been monitoring the communications between the fleets while taking detailed notes about alien behavior patterns. Kevin, look at this, she called to her assistant. Their military commander is completely confused by basic human organization. They literally cannot understand democratic government. That's interesting, but shouldn't we be worried about the fighting that's about to start? Kevin replied while reviewing the tactical data. What fighting? Look at the numbers. There are 500 ships against our 12,000. It would be like bringing a knife to a gunfight. But what if more Zephyrian ships arrive? Amy pulled up intelligence reports on her holographic display. According to our deep space monitors, their main battle fleet is still 2 weeks away. Even then, it's only 5,000 ships total. Admiral. Morrison was in his office reviewing the morning reports when Captain Lisa Bennett walked in with updates from the front lines. How are things going out there, Lisa? Morrison asked while signing requisition forms. Pretty quiet. The Zephyrian commander seems confused about our command structure. Kate Williams is handling the diplomatic contact. Good choice. Kate's practical about these things. Morrison made a note on his calendar. Any indication they plan to actually fight? Hard to say, sir. They keep talking about surrender, but they seem to expect us to surrender to them. Odd. Well, let Sam Miller know he can engage if they make any hostile moves. Standard rules of engagement. Yes, sir. Should we alert the other sectors? Might as well. This could get busy soon. What Fleet Commander Korthak and the Zephyrian Empire were about to discover was that humanity had revolutionized warfare itself. While other species focused on traditional tactics and overwhelming force, humans had spent 20 years developing technology and strategies that made conventional galactic combat obsolete. The real question was not whether humanity could win the coming battle. The question was whether the Zephyrian Empire would survive the encounter with a species that treated galactic conquest as a routine administrative problem. Emperor Vexthal was furious when he received Fleet Commander Korthak's report about the situation at the human border. The Emperor paced back and forth in his crystal throne room while his advisors tried to make sense of the impossible intelligence updates. 12,000 ships? The Emperor roared, his forearms waving dramatically. Our spies reported less than 100 vessels total. How could they hide such a massive fleet? General Moxtar shifted nervously in his ornate armor. Your Imperial Majesty, perhaps the humans have been building ships in secret. Some species are more cunning than they appear. Cunning or not, I refuse to be embarrassed by these primitive creatures. The Emperor stopped pacing and turned to his military staff. Prepare the main battle armada. I want every available ship ready for immediate deployment. Sir, that would be our entire military force. Over 5,000 vessels, including the World Render, General Moxtar said with concern in his voice. Perfect. We will crush them with overwhelming force and show the galaxy what happens when someone defies the Zephyrian Empire. The World Render was the Emperor's pride and joy. The massive flagship was 3 miles long and capable of cracking planets with its primary weapon. It had never been defeated in battle, and served as the ultimate symbol of imperial power. When lesser species saw the World Render approaching their worlds, they usually surrendered immediately. Back on Earth, the response to the escalating situation was typically human. A committee was formed to address what officials were calling the Zephyrian situation. Admiral Morrison found himself chairing the Defense Appropriations Committee meeting, in a small conference room with fluorescent lighting and uncomfortable chairs. "Ladies and gentlemen, we need to discuss budget allocations for dealing with this empire," Morrison announced while reviewing his notes. "The main question is whether to use surplus equipment from our warehouses or commission new ships specifically for this operation." General Beth Taylor raised her hand. "I vote for the surplus stuff. We've got thousands of Mark VI plasma cannon systems just sitting in storage. Plus, we haven't field-tested the Mark VII systems yet, and this seems like a good opportunity." Admiral Chris Davis disagreed. "The new ships have better crew quarters, though. If we're going to be out there for more than a few days, comfort becomes a factor." "The new ships also have those improved cup holders," added Captain Jennifer Wright from the logistics department. Morrison made notes on his pad while the discussion continued. "What about ammunition supplies? Do we have enough for extended operations?" "More than enough, sir," replied Colonel Tony Martinez. "We've been stockpiling for 20 years. We could probably fight for months without resupply." "Excellent. Any other concerns?" Dr. Sarah Mitchell from Advanced Weapons Research cleared her throat. "Admiral, I should mention that our new targeting systems are completely untested in actual combat. The computer simulations look good, but real battle conditions might reveal issues." "What kind of issues?" "Well, the AI targeting computers are designed to track and engage 50 targets simultaneously per weapon system. In a large battle, they might get overwhelmed." Morrison nodded thoughtfully. "How many targets can the Zephyrians throw at us?" "Based on their fleet composition, maybe a few thousand ships total." "And we have how many weapon systems?" Sarah checked her notes. "About 15,000 ship-mounted systems plus the planetary defense installations. So even if each system can only handle 10 targets instead of 50, we should be fine." "Yes, sir." "We'd still have significant overkill capacity." Meanwhile, Commander Susan Clark was conducting routine patrols in the outer system with her squadron of 12 ships. Susan was a veteran officer with 15 years of experience in deep space operations. Her ships were part of the new generation of human vessels that looked ordinary from the outside, but contained revolutionary technology. "Commander, we are detecting a massive hyperspace signature approaching," reported her sensor officer, Lieutenant Dave Peterson. "How massive?" "Approximately 5,000 ships, sir. It's the largest fleet movement in recorded galactic history." Susan nodded calmly while reviewing the tactical display. "That would be the main Zephyrian battle fleet. Right on schedule according to intelligence predictions." "Orders, sir?" "Continue standard patrol pattern. Send a status update to Fleet Command." The Zephyrian main battle armada dropped out of hyperspace in a display designed to terrify any opposition. 5,000 warships arranged in perfect formation with the massive world render at the center. Emperor Vexthul himself was aboard his flagship, ready to personally oversee the destruction of human resistance. "Magnificent," the Emperor declared as he surveyed his fleet from the bridge. "No species in galactic history has ever faced such overwhelming force." Fleet Commander Korthak approached with updated tactical reports. "Your Imperial Majesty, I must warn you that human capabilities appear to exceed our intelligence estimates." "Nonsense. 5,000 ships can defeat any opposition." The Emperor gestured toward the main display. "Look at this awesome sight. They will surrender the moment they see us." "Sir, with respect, they already refused to surrender when facing my advance fleet. Their behavior is unlike any species we have encountered." Emperor Vexthul dismissed the concern with a wave of his hand. They were simply buying time to prepare their pathetic defenses. When they see the full might of the Empire, they will beg for mercy. Commander Susan Clark received the communication request from the Emperor's flagship while she was reviewing crew schedules. She accepted the call and found herself face-to-face with the most powerful ruler in the known galaxy. "I am Emperor Vexthul, Supreme Ruler of the Zephyrian Empire," the alien declared with maximum dramatic effect. "You face the mightiest armada ever assembled. Surrender immediately or watch your species perish." Susan looked at her tactical display showing the Emperor's 5,000 ships compared to her patrol squadron of 12 vessels. "Your Imperial Majesty, this is Commander Clark of the Terran Defense Force. You are in violation of interstellar law. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." "Consequences? You dare threaten me with 12 ships against 5,000? "Sir, these aren't threats. They're consequences. You have 30 seconds to begin withdrawal procedures." Emperor Vexthul could not believe what he was hearing. "You are either completely insane or the most foolish creature in the galaxy. I command enough firepower to destroy planets. 20 seconds, sir. The Emperor decided that these humans needed a lesson in reality. All ships prepare to attack. Show them what Imperial justice looks like. 10 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Susan sighed and activated her combat systems. All ships engage hostile targets. Standard combat protocols. What happened next would be remembered as the most one-sided battle in galactic history. The 12 human ships didn't just defeat the Zephyrian armada. They completely dismantled it in a display of technological superiority that redefined the concept of warfare itself. Human weapons punched through Zephyrian shields like they didn't exist. Human ships moved with impossible speed and agility, while their targeting systems locked onto hundreds of enemy vessels simultaneously. The battle that Emperor Vexthul expected to win in minutes was over in 17 minutes. But not the way he had planned. The mighty World Render, pride of the Zephyrian Empire, drifted powerless with its weapons destroyed and engines disabled. The Emperor himself sat in his command chair staring at displays that showed the complete destruction of his supposedly invincible fleet. Emperor Vexthul found himself aboard a human vessel for the first time in his 300-year life. The ship's interior was surprisingly plain with gray walls and practical lighting. No golden decorations or crystal sculptures like his own flagship. Just functional corridors and efficient design. Captain Joe Martinez escorted the Emperor through the ship with the casual courtesy humans showed to any visiting dignitary. Joe was a middle-aged officer with graying hair and the relaxed attitude of someone who had seen everything at least once. Your Imperial Majesty, President Brooks is waiting to speak with you in the conference room, Joe said while leading the way down a corridor lined with crew quarters. This is impossible, the Emperor muttered, his forearms gesturing weakly. My fleet was invincible. 5,000 ships including the World Render. How did you develop such technology? Oh, we've had this stuff for years. We just don't like to show off. Joe paused at a door marked Conference Room B. Can I get you anything? Coffee, water, maybe some of those crackers from the mess hall? The Emperor was too shocked to respond. Joe opened the door and gestured for him to enter. President Helen Brooks appeared on the main holographic display, sitting in her office with the familiar backdrop of the American flag and presidential seal. She smiled warmly as if greeting an old friend rather than a defeated enemy. Your Imperial Majesty, thank you for taking the time to meet with us. I hope the accommodations are acceptable. Acceptable? The Emperor's voice cracked slightly. My entire armada has been destroyed. The World Render itself is a drifting wreck. How is any of this possible? Well, that brings us to why we wanted to talk. We need to discuss some policy changes regarding your empire. Dr. Amy Rodriguez entered the conference room carrying a data pad and looking excited about the opportunity to interview her first galactic emperor. She had been studying Zephyrian culture for weeks and had dozens of questions prepared. This is fascinating, Amy said while setting up her recording equipment, a monarchical system spanning thousands of worlds. How do you handle the administrative logistics? The bureaucracy alone must be incredible. Emperor Vexthul stared at the human scientist with complete confusion. Administrative logistics? I am the supreme ruler. I command and my subjects obey. But what about local governance? Resource allocation? Economic planning? You can't micromanage 4,000 star systems from a single location. The Emperor had never really thought about such mundane details. His nobles handled local administration while he focused on conquest and ceremonial duties. The idea that someone would find bureaucracy fascinating was completely foreign to him. President Brooks cleared her throat to regain attention. Your Majesty, we've reviewed your governmental structure and frankly it's not very efficient. We'd like to implement what we call the human administrative model. What does that involve? The Emperor asked weakly. Democratic elections, individual rights, economic freedom, that sort of thing. Much more efficient than the monarchy approach. But I am the Emperor. I have ruled for 3 centuries. My bloodline stretches back for millennia. And I'm sure you've done fine work, but your services are no longer required. The transition happened with shocking efficiency that left the galaxy stunned. Human administrative teams arrived at Zephyrian worlds within days of the Emperor's defeat. Coordinator Nancy Foster led the team, assigned to Zentara Prime while systems analyst. Ted Cooper handled the Outer Rim territories. Nancy was a practical woman who treated governmental reform like any other project management assignment. She arrived at the Imperial capital with clipboards, spreadsheets, and voter registration forms. All right, everyone, We're going to restructure this whole system, Nancy announced to the assembled Zephyrian nobles in the Crystal Throne Room. First item on the agenda is establishing basic democratic institutions. Lord Kextar, the Emperor's former chief advisor, raised one of his forearms. But we have served the imperial family for generations. This is our way of life. Our change is hard, I understand. But democracy is much more efficient once you get used to it. Nancy consulted her checklist. We'll start with local elections next month. I need volunteers to help with voter education and polling station setup. The former Zephyrian Empire became a loose confederation of democratic systems faster than anyone thought possible. Each world held elections to choose their own leaders while maintaining economic and cultural ties with neighboring systems. Former Emperor Vexthul found himself in the strangest situation of his long life. After centuries of absolute power, he was now a private citizen on his own homeworld. Nancy Foster had suggested he consider running for local office since he had extensive leadership experience. But I don't understand this voting process, Vexthul complained to his campaign manager, an enthusiastic young Zephyrian named Tolvan. It's simple, Your Former Majesty. You explain to people why they should choose you as their leader and then they decide. But what if they choose wrong? Then you try again next election. That's democracy. Vexthul's campaign platform focused on experienced leadership and fiscal responsibility. His main opponent was a former military officer who promised more funding for education and infrastructure. The election was closer than anyone expected. On election night, Vexthul won by a narrow margin of 3%. His victory speech was awkward but sincere. Citizens of Zentara Prime, I promise to serve you with the same dedication I once brought to ruling the Empire. Except now you can vote me out if I do a bad job. Back on Earth, Admiral Morrison was filing his final report on what military records would call the Zephyrian situation. The paperwork was remarkably simple given the scope of what had happened. Under the section marked Lessons Learned, Morrison wrote, Next time someone declares war on us, maybe send a fruit basket first. Diplomacy is cheaper than deployment costs. The total human casualties from the conflict were 0. Equipment losses were minimal, mostly involving some scuffed paint on a few ships. The entire war had lasted less than a month from declaration to resolution. Dr. Amy Rodriguez published her research paper on administrative adaptation in post-imperial societies, which became required reading at universities across human space. Her work on rapid governmental transition became the standard model for future diplomatic interventions. Captain Joe Martinez received a commendation for his handling of the defeated emperor, though he always insisted he had just treated their guest with normal courtesy. Life returned to normal with remarkable speed. The weekly poker games resumed at Luna Base. The infrastructure projects continued on schedule. Dr. Rodriguez began studying the cultural patterns of the new Democratic Confederation that had replaced the Empire, and somewhere in the outer rim of the galaxy, another aggressive empire was drafting threatening messages to humanity. Their intelligence services had apparently not heard about the Zephyrian situation, or perhaps they believed their own forces were superior to their former imperial neighbors. These new threats would arrive at Admiral Morrison's desk in a few weeks, where they would be filed appropriately and handled with the same casual efficiency that had become humanity's signature approach to galactic politics. The galaxy had learned an important lesson about humanity. When they hardly cared about declarations of war and threats of total annihilation, it usually meant they were several steps ahead of everyone else's best-case scenarios. For humans, galactic conquest had become just another middle management problem, and they were very good at solving problems efficiently